Okay, everyone. Welcome to Rugby in Lockdown 4. Today, we're going to be focusing on the TP15s and looking a bit back on what's happened so far and also what the next stages are. So we've got Susie Appleby from Exeter Chiefs. We've got Katy Daley-Mclean, who is now of Sale Sharks. And we've also got England coach Simon Middleton. Same format as before. So everyone can see there's a poll there as well. You can actually, there isn't a poll. There will be now because I've launched it. There's also a Q&A box. So if you've got questions, either about what we're talking about or for any of our panelists, you can put them there. I've already got questions that some of you have been sending me, so I'll be asking those over the course of the webinar as well. But first, let's catch up with the panel. So, Simon, you were in the midst of the Six Nations when the lockdown happened. Tell us what happened and from your side.
Yeah, well, obviously we were 4 games in, and we were pretty lucky to get the 4th one in. It was obviously the coronavirus situation was sort of getting into full swing as we were setting up to play Wales, and once we got through that game, it quickly became evident that everybody was going into lockdown and things were going to change. So we were on we were obviously on quite a good roll. We got ourselves into position and we were ready to go to Italy and hopefully try and secure a Grand Slam. But like everybody else, obviously we had to go into lockdown, and then it was just a case of trying to connect everybody up as quickly as possible, and probably learn a lot of high speed lessons like most people, and certainly most sports people have done, and how to connect up on Zoom and various other platforms so we could communicate effectively with each other, and that's what we've been doing, and then just trying to drive the program from within, based on a lot of virtual stuff and a lot of information, and just trying to get the girls as much sort of information as possible to keep them ticking over until we're ready to come back in.
So did you was it England setting them their training? Because obviously over the period they would have switched back to clubs. So are the England girls still training as you would, or have they gone to club training? And how is that? How are you managing even that strength and conditioning side?
Well, it's a combination, to be absolutely honest. I think the clubs and England are working really effectively hand in hand. So if you take the S&C programs for a start, because they're probably the ones that are in a fashion most easy to connect up. The girls have got a program from England. They've got a program from their clubs, and we're allowing them to mix and match whichever one they feel is appropriate for them, because obviously we want to meet their physical needs, but the key bit through all this is to keep some variation and keep the girls engaged into it. So the England and the clubs have worked together to provide that sort of a platform in terms of S&C, certainly in terms of skills and whatnot. There's lots of idea sharing going among the girls. All the girls have got IDP, so they've got a real clear picture of the things that they need to be working on, and so we're working it that way. I think what we did do right at the start was to do a quick inventory of everybody in lockdown and see what they had in terms of facilities available to them, whether it's a field next to where they live or whether they've got some weights in their garage or whatever. And then we customized quite a lot of programs based on what some of the girls have got and what some of the girls haven't got. So the programs will probably look very different. What every player was given from England was a body weight program or a series of programs. So if you have absolutely nothing, there's still a comprehensive S&C program you can do, coupled with obviously running, cycling, things like that, which obviously we can still do because we're allowed out once a day. So yeah, lots of ingenuity and some brilliant innovative stuff going on, and key part of it is lots of good sort of communication between clubs, country and players to keep the whole thing rolling along.
And I've seen we've got a big piece coming up in the next issue with Emily, and she was saying that she's been able to go around the farmyard picking up random bits of tires and pallets and this sort of stuff, and it sounds like she's kind of chasing chickens like Rocky style in her farm in the Midlands.
Yeah, I think she'd be the first one to put her hand up and say she's in a really good situation in terms of the amount of space she's got and some of the facilities. But she's also done, she's taken things into her own hands as well, and she's ordered stuff that she can use, some kicking nets and things like that. So she's obviously invested into her game, her personal game as well, and got some stuff that's going to help her do some of the skills she may not be able to do with just regular stuff that's on the farm. But yeah, she's I think she's quite happy where she is, living the life back back on the farm with her parents.
And when you look at the plans now, because you were going to have 2 summer tests, I believe, so presumably you're presuming that's not happening now. Is that the case?
Well, I think until everybody knows exactly when we're coming out of lockdown, which is obviously the big question for everybody. I think a lot of things are being kept fluid, and I'm pretty sure that the RFU are in dialogue with the other international countries to see, just how flexible they can be, and can we fit these fixtures in if lockdown's lifted. I think obviously as time goes on, it becomes a little bit probably unrealistic to think some of the games will get played, but while ever there's a chance to make them happen safely, I think they'll be kept on the table. But once once that doesn't become feasible and sort of summer runs into autumn as such, then obviously that then we have to look at what else is available. Obviously there's a Six Nations game against Italy that we're hoping to get in and finish the Six Nations off, but again, it's subject to what happens in terms of the lockdown being lifted.
And how have you been able to keep motivation? Because presumably when you've got certain marks that pass, because the domestic season is not going to happen, this is not going to happen, it gets harder for the players to keep training at the same level because they still got to train 6 times a week or whatever you've set them.
Yeah, and it is, and it's been one of the biggest challenges, and I'm sure it's a challenge that sort of every sport is faced at the moment. How do you keep your players engaged? We've got lots and lots of things on the go at the moment, and a lot of it isn't just training related. We have compete to win competitions where the girls are in various groups and they set themselves challenges, and there's lots of little things going off through the week. So I think it's absolutely critical that we get a balance between what the girls are trying to do from a work perspective and a training perspective, and what they can do just as a social interactions as well. And they've been fantastic, and again, really innovative with some of the stuff they've come up with. And obviously within any rugby environment, there's the various facets. You've got your forwards, you've got your backs, you've got your attack, you've got your defence, you've got your various groups that work on leading, etc. And it's just trying to engage the various groups into different activities. So somebody's working towards something, and I think the key bit is that people feel like they've got a purpose. Whilst at the same, in fact, to be honest, one of the hardest things we're finding at the moment is getting the girls to just sort of switch off a little bit and realise that we don't want to be on it 7 days a week. They've got a fantastic work ethic. They're incredibly professional as a group, and they know what the targets are we would like to achieve when we come out of lockdown, and they're working towards it. But at the same time, it's absolutely critical that people know they can switch off, and they can get a mental relief from the situation as it is, and we'll support them in whatever way they think they can do that.
It's one thing with the fitness side of things. You worried about the skills because the skills feel like it's then the match sharpness and the rugby skills seem a bit harder to do than the strength and conditioning when it's about weights and running and off these sessions and things like that.
Yeah, well, again, I think right at the start of the lockdown, we had we did a quick inventory of what people have got, what they haven't got. But probably one of the things we made sure that everybody had was access to a rugby ball or a number of rugby balls. And once you've got that, it's amazing what you can come up with. And some of the things that the girls have come up and how they've developed some of their skills and continue to support some of their skills has been brilliant. They're using their parents to train with, or their partners to train with. And there was I got a little video the other day of Zoe Harrison with a number of wheelie bins set up, and she was practicing chipping over them and pushing the ball between them, and that's the type of stuff that the girls are doing. So the skill bit, I think it's totally unrealistic to expect that the girls are going to come out of this with a skill set where they left it. But we're talking about players who are highly skilled international players. They have a fantastic skill set and a great attitude. And I think that the skill set, it will be a lot easier to sort of pick back up and get back to a level where we probably left, as opposed to if you detrain as an athlete, it then becomes a lot more difficult to pick that physical side of it up. So we're not too worried about the skill bit. We know the girls are doing lots and lots of stuff already in the situation that they're in. The key bit is probably just staying on top of the physical bit.
How long do you think you would need? So say, I think your test against Ireland, I can't remember who the second one was, Ireland and France in the summer?
Yeah. So we were playing Ireland and Spain.
Sorry, Ireland and Spain. And how long do you think you would need minimum to get a side ready for one of those tests? So, you know, how soon after lockdown with the players do you think would be an ideal scenario?
Well, the key bit is the physical bit first and foremost. So there's got to be, no, I'll rewind that a little bit. The first bit is to make sure that the girls get a mental break when they come out. So we won't go straight back into training. I think the key bit is to make sure once we're out of lockdown, the players can go see the friends and family so they can get out. And we'll probably allocate a week or so that they'll be able to get out and just get away from what has been an incredibly tough situation and give them some mental relaxation. Let them re-engage with the people who they love and the people that they've really missed. Once we get sort of past that initial bit, the physical bit will probably take, could be anything, 4 to 6 to 8 weeks probably physically. Within that, we'll integrate the skill level. So I would imagine the skills that we run alongside the physical development of the girls will be enough to get them back to where we're probably capable of playing the games. But the key bit will be we won't play before they're physically ready. So you have to get back into the contact situations, developing players' contact skills again, body hardness, contact hardness, all the things that make the game safer. Because their ability to be able to do those skills, they're the key bits, and that'll go hand in hand in what will be a sort of certainly a tapered physical program. So you're probably not going to be far off 10 weeks.
Okay, let's move to Katy, because you're the recipient of one of these programs. Tell me about how your training regime and everything's changed since lockdown.
Yeah, well, basically having programs for your club and country, you can choose the running session you want to do, or ignore the ones that you don't. So that's definitely been a bit of a perk. No, I think obviously Simon's touched on. I think for us it's good to have a program. I think we're used to being certainly I'm used to being out and about with people training. It's a big part. It's our full-time job. So I think the opportunity to have that and to still have that bit of routine and normality in your days being really, really important. Talk about the physical health, but also just for the mental health of a lot of our girls. For me, it's a sense of achievement, it's a sense of purpose, like Simon's touched on. So I think it's been really, really useful to be able to go, right, actually for the next hour or whatever my day I'm going to train, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get things done that I can almost tick off. I think you touch on talking about Skazzy there, and she's literally living the dream. She's got a proper little shed set up with, she doesn't have to be outdoors in the rain like the rest of us on a bit of random land in the garden. She's got doors and rollers and heaters, a lot. So she's living the elite life of training, whereas the rest of us are probably living the slightly poorer version.
I guess there is also, she lives on her own as well, doesn't she? So she did say that she had some tough puzzles being sent to her. So that was one of the challenges. I think Mo had sent her a tough puzzle that was like a 500 piecer. So she's challenging herself in every aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I do love Skazzy, and I think she's a good girl, but she does like sitting quietly and doing nothing either. So when she's giving you all of this about all the kind of hard graft she's doing, there'll be a lot of time spent watching TV doing absolutely nothing. So that girl will be in heaven basically, and sitting in quiet.
So how have you? Because you've obviously made some other moves as well at the same time. So this is quite a big decision. Was this for you to? So you've joined Sale as a player coach. Are you officially Sale now? Are you still Loughborough?
Yeah, no, officially.
So tell me about this and how this came about.
I think obviously being at Loughborough has been fantastic for my development personally. Working with Reece there and the facilities and the quality of player that Loughborough have, it's been brilliant. But I live in Manchester, so I've obviously always kind of kept a bit of an eye about what was going to go on with the TPs and the retender, etc. And obviously, once it got announced that Sale was in it was just about having a conversation with them and looking about what their vision was. Ultimately, I'm sure Susie will know this, but to start something from the beginning is pretty unique in any sport now, especially in professional world. You don't get the opportunity to build something from the ground, and that for me was very exciting to speak to Darren, who's the head of rugby, but also to speak to kind of Michelle Orange, one of the co-owners, was just to see their vision of what they want to do with rugby in the Northwest, but also to have the opportunity to be part of that and to help shape that using some of the lessons that I've learned from my playing days at clubs, from being with England now, and just to kind of be involved in that was really, really exciting.
What do you feel the potential is? I mean, and also how close is the Sale Sharks family? Are you all together in one unit? How's that going to work?
Yeah, so I think for Sale, one of the things that really excited me was when you speak to people is it's all going to be based at Carrington. So everything that the training, the facility, the women are going to be fully integrated, separate changing room, but be able to use the gym and all the bits that kind of the guys get access to. The women will be able to use it at different points of the day, just because the current way that when we train, etc., is it at night, so it doesn't clash with the guys. And I think for me, like being able to kind of touch with some of their skills coaches or work with some of the analysis guys and the S&Cs and etc., it's really exciting. I think there's not a lot of rugby union in the Northwest. Probably the nearest northern team was either to go to Loughborough, to go to the Midlands, or to go further north to DMP. So to put something in this area that can really look at developing the future, where young girls don't have to leave the region, and that was one of the big things that Darren talked about, was about building a hub. And obviously, all three of us on the call are from the north in different shapes, and actually will have known that the powerhouses of our game are in the south, and actually to build something up north where it's really easy, it's accessible, but it's also successful was a brand that Sharks really want to go after. And
what sort of talent is up there from what you know about it? What potential is there with this side?
I mean, I think for me, the future is extremely bright. You look at likes of Taisha Harper, who's at Loughborough, she's a Northwest girl. You look at Sarah Beckett, gone to Quins, but again from the Northwest. There's a lot of talent that are in our pathway or playing for England, but haven't been able to access Premiership level rugby. And then that's without all the kind of young girls coming through that are at local clubs that are probably ready for 18s, 19s to making a step. Now they have a club to aspire to play for.
How do the regions, because obviously there's different development programs. We spoke to sort of Rosie Ansley, who she's from Yorkshire. So obviously players are coming from the north, but they're not going anywhere. Or what's happening at the moment? Where's the geographical spread of actual grassroots rugby players?
In terms of at Sale or just in general?
In the women's game, is there, I mean, because obviously in England we've got huge, in the men's side, Yorkshire and Lancashire have been strong sides forever. Is that reflected in the women's game as well?
I think the women's game is very different. I think you probably, again, would look, Susie and Mids might be better at answering this question than me, but in terms of, from my knowledge, a lot of it is a dominance based down south. A lot of it is in and around London. I don't know if you guys have got different views on that.
Simon, any thoughts on the spread, or Susie?
Suze, do you want to pick up on that one?
There's the RFU have worked really hard to try and develop the women's game, at grassroots level. And there's two, I don't know what they call them now, they changed their titles, but James Cooper and Amy Turner have worked really hard to get around the whole country to help them develop the game. But there's always going to be a natural, clubs grow up in different ways, don't they? We've made who's got a fantastic and they're bringing players through. The same is true on the southwest, which obviously I'm now experiencing. Same is true in the northeast. So I don't think the grassroots game is very healthy around the country. Katie touched on it. I don't think, rugby union isn't as big in the Northwest necessarily as it is, in different areas, even the Northeast, I would say, and Mids will be able to comment on that. But, it's just, it's when you get to elite level and the real, I mean, we'll talk about Exeter, no doubt, and Katie's touched on Sale Sharks. The excitement is that now players that are very talented, because there are them all over the country, they don't have to go anywhere. If they want to stay where they live, they do not have to migrate to London, which has been the case for all the time I've been playing. I want to be the best I can be, I'm going to go to London. It's not the case anymore, and that's the massive excitement. So grassroots is incredibly crucial for our development, and mids at the top level for the players coming through. But now we can do it wherever we want to be, which is just it's just going to be fantastic.
So you will move on to you now. Now, obviously, you're a little bit further down the path when it comes to sort of building a side. Now, tell me, when did you join Exeter Chiefs?
Well, I joined in September, but I stayed at Gloucester until December. A little bit complicated, but I was in the middle of doing a really good job there, and I didn't feel it was right to abandon ship. So to speak. So Amy Garnett, who a lot of us know, incredible playing career, she kind of took the reins from the off down in Exeter. And together we spent, I then moved not physically, but, moved clubs at Christmas. And we spent the last 6 months putting a program into place that we believed would be enough to get us into Tyrells. And it was a massive risk, because we didn't know if we were going to be successful. But what we did know was, and from my experience in the league so far, is that we have to provide the very best opportunities for these players. So I knew what it looked like. And fortunately, ex-Chiefs is an unbelievable setup. Rob Baxter's unbelievable. All his staff are so supportive. So I knew that we could provide for these players. As I said, the risk was whether, we could convince the RFU that it was the right place for us to be. And fortunately, 4 weeks or so ago now, they agreed with us, and they've invited us into the league, which is, as I said, absolutely brilliant.
What would have happened if you hadn't won or hadn't got the place? Would you have still carried on developing rugby there? Was it a set period contract?
Yeah, well, I've been employed for 2 years anyway, and I did ask Tony Rowe that question: what if we don't get in? And Tony's answer was, we'll keep trying until we do. So it was very much committed to the cause. They we've seen what they've done in the men's game, unbelievable. Taking players, local players, and the emphasis on local, and creating the most incredible setup down there, where players don't, Jack Knoll doesn't want to leave and migrate elsewhere, So yeah, I mean, as I said, the ambition was to get in straight away, but if it hadn't happened, everyone was still going to be committed to getting where we need to go. So there's been some games played. Tell me what's happened so far with Exeter. So, as I said, the last 6 months have been spent putting together a world-class program. Again, that was probably half of our application, and trying to sell ourselves. As I said, world-class program means that players will come, not necessarily overnight, but they will come because that's what a player wants, to be the very best they can be. And that's what their nations, England first and foremost, obviously produce players for England. So like Katie's touched on, our men's program will dovetail the women's program on any working day of any working week, apart from the days off, So we know that, Ricky Pello might finish delivering to the boys, and then he'll pick up a skill session with the girls, for the scrum halves, or or whatever that's going to look like. Similarly, the S&C, it's all about sharing a facility. So I've kind of digressed. Apologies, Alex. So setting up the world-class program, discovering what's out there. Honestly, I had no idea. I'm not from there. We've moved. I'm from the Northeast. God's country. But I've been. We've all moved around with rugby. Now I have the most amazing opportunity to work at what I believe, from what I've experienced so far, is one of the most wonderful clubs in the country. So yeah, we've been kind of researching. We had to reach out to some players, obviously, had to have some calls, are you interested? It's a maybe at the moment, and that's a really weird thing. Like, we might get in. That's a really thing to try and sell. Yeah. There's nothing real to it, but would you be interested? And people were interested, but for the last 4 weeks, it's been getting back on the phone and saying, okay, we're real now. And you probably asked me what I've spent doing for the last 4 weeks is being on the phone as much as I can, saying, okay, it's real. But it doesn't sell as well when you're not face to face with someone and you can't get them down to experience what it means to be at Exeter Chiefs, because you can't feel it, and feeling is so important. So actually my job's got extra hard because of Corona, and there's nothing, sport is completely irrelevant obviously compared to what's going on in the world, but for me trying to invest in the future, it's been tough. So our recruitment process is ongoing. It has to be, because people are getting in touch every day and just curious. Others, Corona has brought an extreme, a lot of, I think, obviously uncertainty and anxiety are the two things that I think are really crucial. And that's as sports people, in life generally, but sports people are tending therefore to stay where they are, which is totally understandable, because most of them are heading towards a World Cup. Fingers crossed in October 2021. Sorry, Alex, that was a bit of a digression, but
no. I mean, I'm just what players have you got? Have you got like you've obviously looked at the region. I mean, the benefit of the region is that you've got rugby's the main sport down there, basically. So that's the benefit. Have you seen much local talent? Have you thinking from the players you have seen? Because I think you played a handful of games. Is that right? Or
yeah, we played a couple. Yeah.
And that's been local talent, I presume, or
that's a mixture, honestly. We played up from Newcastle Falcons because they were applying to get in the league, so we thought, well, let's have a game up there because that's quite interesting and local for both of us. And then we played against the Army. So yes, the players that played in those games, probably a handful have the ability to step up, because they were either young players playing in the league side that we had set up, and they were totally out their comfort zone, especially playing against someone like the Army, but they were doing something that they will never potentially get to achieve in the rest of their lives. So for them, it's just been amazing. So the answer to your question is there's going to be 40 players, which I know we'll probably get on to discuss. I would say about 3/4 of them will be local. When I say local, it could be the students, it could be, and we've got probably 3 players, for example, that have relocated back to Exeter because that's where they came from, which is brilliant, isn't it? So, Lottie Holland, ex-England Sevens development, Lauren Cattell has actually moved there. She's from Sarries. So, and Garnet McKinder, she's the other one. So they're coming back because they can, which is brilliant. So those are the kind of more experienced players. Then you couple them with, there's some very good talent development group players. So, that's your 17, 18-year-olds. Now, the challenge for me and Amy and the club is they want to be competitive from the off. So how do you marry that up with, we know how incredibly competitive that Tyrells is. So how do you try and hit the ground running with a young player that's only playing senior rugby for the first time? And again, there'll be another topic coming up probably later in the conversation. And that's incredibly difficult, Alex. And not just for us, but you don't want to throw a young 10 in against Katy-Mclean because she's going to sink potentially. Okay. So we have to try and nurture these players in the right way, and that is incredibly important for me. So I'll tell you right now, England players are not coming to our club because they feel settled in what they're doing, and that's totally understandable. We hope we're going to provide something that in the future will not only develop England players, but it'll also maybe attract some other players from around the country that are going to wear England shirts. So we've reached overseas, Alex. You'll find that when we start in September, if it is September, we'll have some overseas players. And we have the luxury of the support of the club to be able to look after them in an appropriate way, find them somewhere to stay, give them a full-time training environment. Now, for me, I don't massively want to invest in overseas players because that's not my job. That's not what Mids wants. But for now, as I said, we need to make sure that everybody's looked after in the right way.
So does that mean there's full-time jobs for some of those players? Are you finding jobs for them? Are they working community jobs, or are they just fogused on rugby? Those guys.
That's probably for the future. So when the salary cap comes in year 2, effectively from now, we're going to be able to spend a certain amount of money. But there's ins and outs, and I won't share the details of what the RFU are saying we can invest in. One of them could potentially be jobs at the club, so that's going to be exciting, isn't it? For the right player. But for now, especially given the current climate, we haven't been able to find jobs. We've got everybody's CVs in an inbox, but funnily enough, local businesses are not going out there and offering jobs. So players are coming because they want to be part of a full-time program and be the best they can be, and they're believing in us, which is brilliant. And as I said, you know, the hope is we're guaranteed a 3-year program, which is fantastic for me. So I know that a 17, 18-year-old, and I won't name an 18-year-old scrum half, but she is going to be absolutely fantastic. And we know that we need to get that process right, stop her going to cricket, which is her other real passion. Okay, and hopefully in a couple of years' time, we're still in Tyrells and we've looked after that player to become the best that she can be. So there's different ways of looking after players, Alex, I think, and that for every club is a real challenge for the next 3 years, how you can look after them, not just financially, but the most important thing for me is the programme.
So the programs were the key the first time around with the process. The program and the facilities they offered, the strength and conditioning, the physio was really important because, you know, with Loughborough, they've got like world-class facilities and it was key to get them in to develop the players. What about the business side of it? When you looked at that tender program, because you're lucky, you're in the only Premiership club that's made money. How much emphasis was put on, look, we can't just look at paying players, we need to build a business. What are you doing for marketing? How are you going to get 5,000 fans there? How much emphasis on that was put in the tender process? And even if it wasn't, what's your idea on that side of things?
You probably won't have been privy to the application process itself, Alex. It is
highlight, basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly stringent. It is massive. It's really stressful. You know, being in Tyrells is quite stressful, honestly. It's which it should be. You know, that's why we're in it. You know, to be the best we can be, to provide the best that we can be. The application process is no different. So you have to show that you have the backing and support of the club. Now, you know, I can walk up a set of stairs and be in a room that is full of a marketing department. You know, Tony Rose PA. You know, all the support that I need, and I know that I don't have to do that bit anymore, which I have done in the past. Honestly, I've put my hands up. You know, I've had to do a lot that I probably shouldn't have to do. Now, I strongly believe clubs like Sale Sharks and Exeter Chiefs have the infrastructure that can provide the support that these clubs need to move everything forward. And I have the ultimate sympathy. Again, you know, I've got good friends at Richmond, incredibly good friends at Waterloo, and they've been a massive part of my development as a player, and then, you know, as a coach, as friendships, etc. But as I said, you know, we now have the opportunity to move this game forward, and making money is part of it, Alex. You know, it's a reality. You know, Tony Rose is a businessman. You know, he's made money through rugby. He's not at the moment, obviously, but you know, he saw the future. He saw 11,000 female fans walk through the gates of Sandy Park, and he saw the future, and he believes in it. And it's up to me to try and make that real.
Yeah, and you, I mean, I don't know what everyone else, but looking at what they have done, you have perhaps the best opportunity, despite being one of the news sides, because of your audience there as well, and you don't have the same competition as what they do in other places as well. Because I'm guessing, you know, when you look at Sale, you've obviously got football is massive, you've got rugby league, which is massive as well. In Devon, you perhaps got a slightly better opportunity than some of the other clubs, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Everything's an opportunity, isn't it? Every time we put on the shirt, it's an opportunity, and that's the biggest sell for any player, isn't it? You know, it's incredible when you put on the pitch up and play, which was before the girls played in November down at Sandy Park. Every young female turned up in an Exeter Chiefs shirt. I couldn't believe it. You know, it was just amazing. It's amazing. It's like, you know, in the football, you know, Megan Rapinoe, you know, and people are buying shirts with her name on the back. That's the future of rugby if we do it right. And the key is to get it right, you know. And that's, I think Quins are really leading the way. And if anyone that goes to play there as an opposition is brutal on a match day, you know, you turn up and there's fire. You know, Katy will know there's fire coming from everywhere. You know, there's thousands of people watching the game because they've done it right before the game, because the community have put on, you know, a whole, you know, pitch up and play, whatever they call it, for the girls, and they're all in there supporting because they want to be. So yes, we do have an opportunity. There isn't, as you alluded to, you know, Exeter City is a football club, but it's not, you know, it's not a Prem League or anything. So, you know, most people want to watch rugby on a Saturday, and the hope is that we'll play on one Saturday, the boys will play at home the next Saturday, and we'll get people coming through the doors, no matter that, you know, whether it's male or female, they're coming to watch because they love rugby. And that's what I felt, you know, that's the feeling that I'm getting down there, which, as I said, then the world's your oyster, isn't it, to help it grow?
Yeah, and now obviously the fallout from this, there is the positivity that we're looking at with these audiences. Obviously, there's been in the short history of sort of women's league rugby as well, there's been scenarios where things have been unsettled, whether it was what happened with Richmond Harlequins, whether it was Lichfield leaving, and Loughborough, and now we've obviously got Richmond leaving again. What's it like, perhaps, Katy or Simon, from your side of things? What's it like when you're in these situations and then you're getting together as England? Is there an overspill from that, or does everyone keep it just focused on England?
I think from a quick on a player's point of view, I think it's really important. Like our club rugby is our bread and butter. It's where everybody starts. You start at your club, and yes, you might have aspirations to play for England. Some people don't. Like club rugby is what they want to do. It's what they feel part of. It gives them that sense of belonging. So I think everybody has a massive passion for their club. So like you've touched on some of the things that have happened in our history, it's massively bothered players. The Lichfield one, for me, probably been a bigger one just because I had a lot more friends at Lichfield at that time, and just kind of seeing how upset the girls were and just trying to be really empathetic with them. It is hard, and like we say, our bread and butter is at our club, so you want the best for the girls, but ultimately it's about the kind of those in power that decide on how the league's shaped, and like Susie's touched on, trying to keep driving the standard of the game.
Yeah. Simon, is that something you're aware of when scenarios like this happen, that you've got to try to get everyone to leave their club colours at the door type thing?
I think, like Katy said, I think at the outset of the Tyrells Premier 15s, some of the decisions that were made obviously meant girls leaving clubs that they've been at for a long, long time, and as Katy's alluded to, the Lichfield one was a massive one, and I think that just shows the passion they have for their clubs, and particularly the friends and the people who they have at those clubs. But I think the key bit we tried to impress on the players is that, yes, we had incredible empathy for the situation, but if you wanted to be part of a successful and professional sport going forward, and if we wanted to take the women's game to the heights that we want to take it to, because we're still very much on the journey as such, these were changes that would have to happen, and I think that helped the girls in terms of understanding the why Lichfield probably weren't in the first round of the Premier 15s, and with that, it just allowed them to get past some of the emotional struggles that they did have, because their ambitions to be professional rugby players were great. I think what you find now is probably what you get in the men's game, and probably it's the same on any England football or any England duty. There's incredible rivalry within the squad when they come together, but it's a really healthy rivalry. Yeah. The Queen's girls, the Sarries girls, the Loughborough girls, the
Sarries girls. Let's be honest, Mids. It's the Sarries girls.
Well, maybe that's what makes Sarries what they are. But it's for us as a coaching group, it's fantastic to see the rivalry, see the competition, because it drives the program. I mean, what they are is when they all put the white shirt on, they're all very much one group. There's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. And you need healthy rivalry, you need competitiveness, and the club scenarios create that. So, we would never even think of trying to quell that. We create our own, as I say, I mentioned a little bit earlier, our own compete to win sort of program, where within the group we break them up into various teams. They go against each other, and they're all mixed and matched against each other. So Quins go against Quins, and Sarries go against Sarries, and etc. And when they're in that competitive environment, they'll gravitate to that group to win, and that's what you want. So these are players who they're out and out winners. They're just like any professional sports person. They're there for a reason, and that is to be as competitive as they can, to be as successful as they can. So you put them into mixed groups, they'll try and get that group to win. You put them into their club groups, they'll try and get their club group to win. Probably a little bit more if you put them into their club groups. But it's brilliant, because it fuels what we're trying to do.
Just to answer the question, now, one of the things with the TP15, we're now into this is going to be the fourth season. So the first 3 years of structure, what difference have you noticed? And that's to all of you really, because you've all been involved in different levels. What have been the main changes that's come about as this new structure?
For me, Alex, it's the attitude of the players towards professionalism, which is now instilled into the clubs, because the clubs were on a massive learning curve when they first went in, and that's why some clubs had a far greater start than others, because they were either aligned to Premiership clubs, men's clubs already, or they were sporting centres of excellence. So they had fantastic infrastructures and a lot of energy behind them, and others had to try and catch up. But I think the main difference I've seen is how quickly those clubs have got up to speed with their alignment in terms of what high performance environments look like. So we've got some unbelievably professional people working, and high quality people working within what are becoming very high quality women's programs within the clubs that are in the Premier 15s now. So that's a big difference, and that reflects on the players. So players come to us far better equipped to drop into England training. So we don't have to concentrate on improving their fitness levels. Everything we do can be focused around rugby, and their skill sets are generally better. But their attitude is so professionally driven, so focused. So it's huge. The difference over 3 years is absolutely huge for me.
Okay, Katy, Susie?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with the professional bit. And I've no secret, obviously, I've been working in an institution-based environment for the last 3 years. And that's a real challenge, honestly, Alex, to drive that professional attitude. I'm going to be really interested to see, now I'm working in a professional rugby club, what the difference is, and how, if it's going to be easier to drive that professional mentality being amongst the male players on a daily basis. I think it will. I said, but I agree with Mids entirely that I've seen players change in the last 3 years. The ones that I've had the privilege to work with for the last 3 years in the same club, change from being your average athlete into professional athletes that know what professional means. I think some really thought they did in the beginning, and some of them have fallen by the wayside because of that. But the new player needs to be professional in every single way. And the fortunate thing is they can now learn how to do that in the club. They don't have to step up to England to learn how to be a pro. They can learn it in the club. So I think that's, again, we talk about opportunities all the time. That's a massive opportunity for all of us. For Katy, Katy has been there and done that, but she will continue to drive that in her club because she's got that brand new environment. Me and Katy have got the same opportunity in brand new environments to drive it in the same direction towards the top level. I'm sure Katy has her views on it as well.
I think probably the biggest change for me is just the standard of our game. I've been playing this game a very long time. Not as long as Susie or Mids have been alive, but a long time. And I think you look at where the baseline is that people come in at, and these will probably see it as coaches, that you would generally turn up to club training and it was run by people who were volunteers and who maybe turned up from work, and they were planning their session en route, and some of the girls could catch, some of the girls had never played rugby before, some of them were internationals for their country, and you had such a mix of standard. Whereas you go to club training now, and across the board, the level of skill, the level of attitude of people there is just so much higher. I think especially last season, it was very similar between being at club and being at international. Whereas previously you would go into England and you would notice the difference. Actually, the expectation of clubs now is that when you're there, you're on it, you're training well, you're eating well, you're doing all the small bits. And I think for me, somebody just asked the question about what you want to see in terms of developing the game going forward. I think for me, it's about that next bit, that semi-pro bit. So girls still working and still having a career, but not having to turn up to club training and now after the finished work. And getting that balance, I think, is the next shift, hopefully, within the league, about giving everybody this opportunity. So it's not just the top 28. It's about giving more girls the opportunity to be part-time, where they can focus really on their rugby just as much as they focus on their work, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's presumably an opportunity. What the sort of women's game has is to do professionalism right first time around, which the men's perhaps didn't, because now we're not even sure if we should have relegation or not in the men's, depending on who you ask. Are we in a stage where, because I asked a question here, should there be promotion relegation? And most people have said yes, but are we in a stage where the league's got to stabilise for another 6 years and then we have promotion relegation? Or do you think we're in a scenario where women's rugby should be franchise-based, full stop, that's it? Any?
Well, I mean, look, I'll jump in on for what it's worth. I think the concept of promotion relegation is absolutely fantastic if you have a strong enough second tier of teams. And at present, the women's game doesn't have that. It's the men's game struggles to have it, but the women's game certainly struggles to have it. The Premier 15s was, the inspiration behind it was to create an elite league of women rugby players that produce effectively players for England. Yeah. So to do that, you have to have a specific type of environment, and it's the environment that we're just starting to see reflected across the whole board. So some teams had it from the word go. Some clubs certainly didn't have it from the word go and worked tirelessly towards it, but still couldn't probably achieve it because there is a financial commitment that comes with it, and there's a lot of support that's required from within in your club. So the infrastructure takes a lot of putting in place, as does the personnel who run the club. So your coaches, your S&C, your medical, all the expert sort of management and staffing that you need to run a high performance environment, and it comes at a cost as that. What we've got now is a situation where if teams want to be party to that, they have to go through the process that Susie's alluded to earlier, which is incredibly stringent. If we didn't have that and we just allowed promotion relegation to roll out as normal, then, you know, with the greatest of respects, you could have a situation which we found at the start of the Premier 15s, which has resulted obviously in two teams probably, you know, now losing their franchise as such because they simply weren't able to sustain the level of commitment needed to work at that very elite end of it. And that's certainly, you know, no disrespect to those two clubs. I think they did everything they could, you know, were within their ability to create as good a product as they could. But ultimately, the Tyrells Premier 15s needs to be an elite environment, and unless you've got a raft of teams or a number of teams under that who can just step up with that sort of infrastructure in place to be able to maintain that level of high performance that we're trying to create there, then all you're going to do is dilute the league down. Yeah. So it's a very tough environment. Again, as Susie's alluded to, but you know, if we think about what the original remit of the league was, then I think we're heading towards it now. And again, massive empathy with Waterloo and Richmond, who have put an awful lot into the league. But the addition of Exeter and Sale, you know, had a great deal of expertise, rugby, strong infrastructure, and everything that we're looking for within the league. And that's why their franchises, that's why their applications were incredibly strong. That's why the franchises were given.
Okay, I'm going to carry on through questions. Some wonderfully awkward ones here. We'll start with you, Simon. So, what the RFU are going to do about the top heavy loading of England players into Sarries and Quins? Okay. There is an imbalance, and obviously, as Susie suggested there, it's hard to get the players down to the regions. How can that be changed?
Yeah, look, I think there's a number of ways, but I think the first thing to stress is that because there's no control at this point in time on how many international players a club can have, then the players are going to gravitate to where they feel they can get their best development. And you know, we've sort of got, without a doubt, the you know, Sarries and Quins are two teams who've got also very rich histories. Now, they've married up their very rich histories in terms of the men's game with very good infrastructures, which is why players gravitate towards them. I think in terms of, is it healthy? I think for the league, probably not, as you look at the situation now, because what you want is competitive games week in, week out. And you want that for a number of reasons. Number one, because you want spectators to come and watch competitive games. Number two, because you want players to play in competitive matches, because that's what raises the standard of their game. So from that point of view, no. But at the same time, you know, if players are going into those environments, then we know, certainly from an England point of view, they're going to be extremely well trained, extremely well conditioned, and they're going to be, their development programs are going to be very strong. Now, what I would say is that the teams now across the whole of the Premier 15s look like they've got incredibly strong programs to offer. So I think the balance will definitely shift. I think there's no doubt whatsoever. I think, as Susie again has alluded to, it may be restricted this year simply because players are going into World Cup year, and the stability of an environment that they know and understand and they believe is good for them is probably the thing that they're looking at going, right, for this year at the very least, this is where I'm best placed. So they'll probably stay for at least another year. They may stay for the rest of the career is playing there. But I think what you will see probably after World Cup year is more of a migration between the clubs, because players are at the start of another World Cup cycle. So if you're going to make a change, make it now. And also, I think the reputation of Exeter, Sale, and the other clubs that are continuing to grow will be far more reaching across the whole of the sort of women's game, and they'll realise that that there's a lot more options out there. So that's and I think that'll be fantastic in terms of the balance of competitiveness across the leagues, because what you don't want is 2 or 3 teams dominating, and it probably looks a little bit like that's been the situation with the Tyrells, but it's not. I think there's probably been a split, a sort of 50-50 split, but on any given day, there's been some really good games won, and some Sarries have lost games, Quins have lost games, Loughborough have had a massive say, Gloucester massive say, Wasps a massive say in what's gone on in the leagues over the last 2 years. So yeah.
Okay, I guess this is kind of connected, maybe to you, Susie, this one. The 60k salary cap for each Premier 15s team from next season. What's that going to do? Is that good, or is that going to do anything to hinder competition, or is it good at this stage of a league's development?
Okay, well, I have a couple of a couple of different opinions on this. First and foremost, I think that it's important for the game not to develop too quickly and to pile millions of pounds into the game and effectively almost ruin it. And just touching on what Mids has just talked about, which is competitive games is crucial, and it's not just for the development of players. But if you think outside the box and you think about a business model, then competitive games means that people will come and watch, because people don't want to come and watch and come and see a one-sided affair, because they won't come back again. So actually it's really important for us to make sure that the league's competitive. So, and that then will sell our game, because we think about TV rights, etc., etc. So there's the bigger picture to think about, and I think that's where the RFU are coming from in terms of the salary cap, and obviously trying to bring in an amount. Now, I believe it's not enough to allow us to spend £60,000. And I'll then bring it back to what Katy touched on when she last spoke, which was about being professionals in our environment. Now, it's very, very difficult / impossible to be professional if you're trying to, if you think about it, trying to be equally fair to your players, and you give them all £1,500, there's no way in a million years that they can even be semi-pro, never mind pro. Okay, so I feel that it needs to be capped, but I don't agree with the amount, because as touched on, we want to provide a professional training environment. We can't access the England players right now, so effectively we're going to be providing a professional training environment for those students and those that can not in full-time work necessarily, who can come and be a part of it. Now, I'm still backing us to probably have 20 in a daily training environment right now with the recruitment that we've done, which is great, and that's our start point. So we're going to kick off on the ground running, but I'm going to stick a figure out there. I think £200,000 is realistic, and that will start to grow the game. And Mids and Katy might disagree with that, and I'm sure they have their opinions. So, but that's what I believe.
Katy, any thoughts on this sort of thing? Because obviously now you're part of the management. You need to think about these things.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I'm not that much of a part of the management yet, Alex. Yeah, I think, look, both the points that Susie and Simon raised are really valid. I think from a playing point of view, ultimately we want to play the game and you want the opportunity to earn a living for it. Like I touched on before, I think gone are the days, hopefully, or the days of the past of having to work a job where people want you to work full time and play rugby. We've done that playing for England, and I think for me the next steps are about being able to be semi-pro to professional in your club. Susie made the point is that you don't want to run before you can walk, and that's really important as well. What you don't want to do is you don't want to ruin the league, and you don't want to see 2 or 3 clubs be able to go and do that without keeping the rest of the clubs with them. Yeah. So I think for me that the big thing is that luckily I'm not in charge of all these really important decisions. But it's definitely about being able to, as a player, to be able to see the bigger picture, but also to know that this is going to constantly be reviewed. So it might be that in year 2, Susie's figure actually becomes a new figure because all 10 clubs can match that. And I think that for me is the biggest thing, is about making sure that what you don't do is you don't make our league unsellable or unmarketable, because actually the clubs that have money have got everything and the clubs that don't have nothing. I think as a player, that's really, really important, because ultimately I want to be playing the best rugby I can week in, week out. I don't want to have to wait for 2 games a year to play the top teams.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. It's about making the league as competitive as it can, as quickly as it can, because that also ties on to, I guess, the next thing, which is about the sponsorship as well. And what do you think it's made a big difference just having a type of sponsor, like even just having a name there has been good for the league?
Yeah, as a player, definitely. You look at what makes what's important to you, and actually the fact that a name like Tyrells is associated with women's rugby, for me, just gives it a bit of like kudos to think actually a business as big as that want to be associated with our game, and that's what you want. The more of that, the better.
Yeah. And just to go through a few more questions, the other one that's come up is about 40 players and 1 team. What kind of problems does this cause? I guess Susie, maybe, if you're assembling a squad, or is that not a problem because you haven't got 40 players?
No, 140. No, I feel really strongly about this, Alex. The reason being that I touched on providing our application was basically twofold, really. There was lots of parts to it, but effectively we're going to provide a world-class program. But the other and equally as important thing was we're going to grow the game in the Southwest. Now, we are intent on doing that, and we've put lots of things in place. So we're appointing a women's academy manager for the first time ever, I think, in the women's game. We've also got 7 apprenticeships available for women, the young female athlete who actually doesn't want to go to uni or be incredibly academic, but actually we're providing them with apprenticeships. So there's lots of stuff going on to grow the game. Now, a key part of this, it's interesting, isn't it? Because ourselves and Sale are the only clubs that are putting a squad together. The rest are having to lose players. So it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? Because you're going from 60 to 40. Naturally, you're going to probably get, with the nicest possible use of the word, wastage, people retiring or, job situations changing or leaving the game, blah, blah, blah. But actually, for us in Sale Sharks, we're growing. So, we've got to find 40 players. Now, on any given Saturday, we will select 22 players. Now, we all know there's going to be injuries, but if your players are all fit to play, Alex, you've got 18 players that need to be housed and need to be playing competitive rugby. Now, there's a question come up down there about Bucks and uni rugby. I believe that this decision by the RFU will bring the Bucks program up where it should be. Bucks rugby is really important, and it's also very important to make sure that your programs are aligned to a uni program or a college program, and that we're all growing together. So there's going to be an emphasis on a Wednesday playing opportunity. But for me, and as I said, I've had a couple of dialogues with the RFU this week. This is really important. Now, I understand we need to grow the championship, For us in Exeter, our nearest championship club is either 2 hours away to Bath or 3 hours away to Southampton. Now, for me, I'll go back to where I started on. If you think I've gone off track, possibly. But we're not going to grow the game in the Southwest if our 18 non-selected players are having to trek up the road to Bath or over to Southampton. That's not going to grow the game in the Southwest. What is going to grow the game is our nearest ambitious clubs, and I know because I spent the last 6 months talking to them, is Plymouth Albion and Columpton, who both sit in Championship 2. Now, it's 2 levels below. Right now, our players aren't allowed to go and play in Championship 2. So, it's another. You can probably spend hours talking about this, but it's another. I feel incredibly strongly because I need to be able to have relationships with these clubs that we're working with. I can't send the girls off, because they probably won't go, and I fear that they therefore won't play the rugby on the Saturday they need to, because I can't. In year 2, I can't pay for them to go either, because it's going to cost them a load of money to drive up the motorway across the country. So as I said, I've probably said a lot of information there, but for us to grow the game effectively, and I know it's going to governance, so I won't berate the RFU unfairly, because I know that the RFU really want to support us reaching down to Championship 2 level to enable us to all grow the game together, because we need one of those clubs into Championship 1 and, to provide that opportunity to play. So, as I said, it's another thing. If you look at, I've spoken to Giselle and others, from Wasp and all those other clubs, she's having to lose players. That's incredibly, incredibly difficult. So, the Development League it was very, very valuable in certain clubs. But there's lots of different models.
Have you been, as a result of people having to get rid of certain players, have they called you? Have they called you and Sale? Was that what's happened? Because that was.
I wish they had. No, yeah. Well, to be fair, we have had a couple. That's more geographical. That they were driving. They might, a couple from Dorset, for example, were driving north to Richmond. Now they might go west to Exeter. There's a couple that have relocated because they want to, and they're coming to join Exeter and play Prem Rugby because that's how much it means to them. So there has been a knock-on effect, but not really the losing of the Development League. That hasn't seen us gain players, if that makes sense.
You any thoughts on this, Katy?
I think it's got to be really hard. Like Susie says, ultimately you want to play rugby. That's basically why you train on it, or certainly why I train on it Tuesday and Thursdays, because I want to play. So I think for those girls, like you say, who are in that, maybe not, they might make a match day squad occasionally, or they might get a couple of minutes here and there, or they might get games where there's injuries in that position, but aren't going to be a regular feature of your first team, probably 23 to 30. I think it's going to be really, really hard. I think that, like Susie said, especially say at Loughborough, where there was a massive pool of players there, because you had uni girls who were playing bucks, but then will play development. They might get an opportunity to come and play in TPs. I think it's going to be different to try and how you disseminate them around. And like you say, for us as Exeter and Sale, we're looking to get players in to make a 40. The other team trying to have conversations to say, realistically, you're not going to make my 40 when there's been all this work to try and grab a previous 60. I think from a coaching perspective is that's really, really hard, isn't it? But ultimately, when we talk about the long-term development of the game, hopefully, like we touched on, those players then get the opportunity to maybe play Championship rugby, then develop the standard of the Championship in the next 3 years. When we talk about promotion relegation, in a perfect world, there's a much stronger, much healthier Championship that can then maybe go and challenge.
I mean, is that the case, Simon? You think these things have certain decisions have got to be made, that there is a consequence, but it's for a longer term goal?
Sorry, Alex, just say that one again. I just lost a little bit of connection.
No. I was saying, is this the scenario where decisions such as the 40 squad and the 60 salary cap, they're decisions that were made for a longer term goal, but they have got immediate consequences because you don't have a perfect role model to follow, because with the A-League has not been a consistent factor in the Premiership. That's been chopped and changed, and likewise the relationship with the Championship in the men's game. So we're not following a path that's been trodden, but not necessarily successfully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're still very much I think trial and error is probably the wrong phrase, but very much in a development stage in terms of a league structure, an elite league structure. And I think the key bit to bear in mind is that this is some trajectory that we're on this league. I think over as we touched on a little bit earlier, from where the league started to where it is now has been absolutely, the rise of it's been absolutely massive. If you think about how long it took the men's game to get from where it started to where it is now, and some of the things that they experienced, and again, as Susie touched on earlier when we talked about the salary capping and things like that, what we have tried to do is probably learn some of the lessons from the men's game, and take them in to allow us to keep the sort of foot down on the growth of the women's game and particularly the league side of it. So yeah, I think in terms of the salary cap, in terms of the 40 squatter, it's trying to learn the lessons that we're experiencing, as we go along, and implement them, just in terms of trying to manage the program, the process as best as possible. But yeah, there's certainly a bit of trial and error, as I say.
A couple other questions. How did the panel feel about the season being basically null and void the end of the domestic season being null and void? Katy, you were obviously in at the sharp end. Your side was in at third, I think you were. So how do you feel about the season just finishing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably would have gone on to win it as well, Alex. Those games. No, I mean, obviously it's like we've touched on before, for the clubs in terms of Waterloo and Richmond. I think you've got it's a kind of a bit of a brutal end, isn't it, for those guys to not know that was obviously nobody knew this was going to happen, but for it to end like that. And I think for the rest of us, there's some great games. The results, my tries still stand. The things that are important, no, but seriously, it's weird, isn't it? It's a very strange end to the league. I think ultimately, from a playing point of view, it'll be one that you don't forget in a hurry.
Is the Premiership, the RFU discussing with all the Premier clubs about what's happening? What are the updates like to go into the clubs? I mean, Susie, are you getting them every week, or what's happening there?
I was copied into a newsletter last week, which, as I said, from previous experience, I can't remember how often it is, every month or so, which is really helpful, so they can only update as much as they know, obviously.
Yeah.
But I touched on it earlier. I know Nikki and Amy, who runs the league effectively, will be having conversations with all the clubs next week who are in the league, which is brilliant. So we're going to get the opportunity to have a proper, Q&A, I guess, with Nikki, which is really important, rather than me continually firing emails at her and filling her inbox. So, as I said, there's lots going on. There's just such uncertainty. I mean, touching on that, I think null and void, they had to call it something, but it was never null and void. For me, I saw probably there's usually two leaders. There was clearly a top four that were really gunning, this year, and any given team could win on their given day. I think Loughborough were outstanding this season.
You obviously meant Loughborough, didn't you, Suze, when you said that?
Yeah. But equally as importantly, Darlington had their best season ever. I think that's really important to know. So that, they were right on Bristol's heels. Now they're looking at a top 7, who are being competitive and turning teams over on any given day. So what we've all talked about for the last hour and over an hour is making this league competitive. We can see it's becoming more and more competitive, and unfortunately the teams at the bottom have fallen short. Yappy's gone into Worcester and made an incredible difference already, and been rewarded because they're back in the league, aren't they? So there's lots going on, but yeah, it's really important. I think the consultation process, Alex, and I've no doubt, I'll speak to Nikki next week. Consultation with the clubs is incredibly important. Way back to when we started as well. We sat down in November as clubs and were consulted about what was going to happen next beyond, year 4 and beyond. And that makes every club feel really important because, as Mids knows and everybody knows, it's hard work out in the club. So, then you feel like you're getting to input and be really a part of, or at least to have an opinion on what happens next type thing.
Is it good to have any time to think about the next stage? Because, this is the end of the first era of the Tyrells. Is there any positives to be had from there being a bit more time before the next stage starts? So, Simon, is any like?
Well, I think it's always good to reflect on everything, isn't it? If you get time and it's you know it's as Susie again alluded to, it's so busy and so chaotic is the whole running the women's program and the league and everything. It's like I would imagine every sort of top sporting outfit, people don't probably realize just how chaotic it is running something like that. And you don't have time to breathe. It's like it's a non-stop conveyor belt of things to do. So I think any time you can sit back and just take stock is a good thing. But this is a bit too much. I think what people are generally in those environments because they thrive on being active and thrive on the challenges that come sort of bumper to bumper. So I think bit of breathing space, yes, but I'm pretty sure everybody would be wanting to keep things going, because what had happened with the Tyrells Premier 15s, what we'd really got some momentum. So momentum's building all the time with the league, and what we really didn't want was the brakes putting on that, and that obviously everybody's got the brakes on everything at the moment, and the game was growing, the competitiveness that both Katy and Susie have just talked about in terms of teams beating teams, and the energy behind the league, and particularly as it was coming to the back end of the league, and then it starts getting exciting because you can see the top four starting to shape, and you can see that there's going to be who's maybe going to top it and who's going to get into that fourth place, and obviously there's the prize of the final, King's Home, which everybody knows would have been a great spectacle again. So it's really disappointing that it couldn't finish, but we're only in the same boat as everybody else from that perspective. So yeah, good time to take stock and let everybody breathe a little bit. But as I say, we're in this business for a particular reason. It's because we like the high energy that goes with it, and so certainly from our point of view, we would have liked it to continue or certainly get back on track a lot quicker. But stuff like that is miles out of our hands, obviously.
So we've had obviously, the era we've just sort of come through the last sort of 18 months, 2 years. We've had a much bigger focus, particularly in the media, on women's sport than kind of ever before, and it felt like things were changing. How do we capitalize on that in rugby? Because obviously we've seen big changes in the coverage, particularly in football and perhaps even cricket as well. How can we do that with rugby? And really, the World Cup's are still a year away, as far as we know. Has there been any change on that, Simon? The World Cup, has there been talks about?
No, as things stand at the moment, understanding is that the World Cup's still scheduled for 2021. So, hopefully that'll go ahead, and that'll be that in itself will be another huge spike for the women's game. In terms of the women's rugby, I think some of the other things that have propelled it forward. I think 2017 World Cup was absolutely massive in terms of taking the game to probably the next level. But for us, the growth of the Premier 15s is absolutely pivotal in taking the game to the next level. And and you can see the quality of the play, and it is getting out to the public. There's a lot of stuff going on in terms of promoting the game and exposing the game to the public, and then certainly from our point of view, the sort of rise of the Red Roses and the profile of the Red Roses and everything that's gone with that. So I think there's a lot of things going on in the women's game that are getting it exposed to a wider audience and a new audience, and we've seen that with the crowds that the Roses have attracted when we have played, and when we've taken it around the country and taken the team around the country. So I think it's certainly in a healthy state. What we've got to do is just keep the momentum going, and obviously the league is absolutely pivotal to that, as is the international program.
So what needs to happen next with the TP15s across the board? Obviously, there are things that are happening now, but I'm presumably clubs need to do more, players need to do more. I'm sure the governing body. What would be the things you would like to see, and that's to everyone, change to help the TP15s get to the next stage? Let's start with you, Susie.
I touched on it earlier, Alex. I think match days are really important to make it, and this is certainly what we have the ambition to do at Exeter, work with the community department to make it a really fun day out, because that's going to attract more people to come and watch our game, but also the young girls that are going to play some sport or other, that they're going to choose rugby at some stage during their lives. So as I said, we want to make it, as I said, it's a fun day out, because and that includes obviously not just coming to watch rugby, because not your young kids don't necessarily want to watch rugby, but actually there might be bouncy castles, there might be food and drink, and that's what I think we need to do to grow the game, alongside everything else that we've talked about, which is the weekly stuff that we do.
Simon?
Yeah, I think Susie's absolutely right. I think that it's about the experience, isn't it? And I think what you feel when you go to certainly when you go to a Red Roses game, is the energy in the crowd from the moment you arrive. So whether it's Doncaster or whether it's Bedford or whether it's at Exeter's we experience this year, or Quins, the buzz around the ground when you get there, and so many things going off that are entertaining. The fans who are coming, and and that particular audience that are coming, a lot of young fans there. So I think creating an experience that is not just about the game itself is hugely important. I think it's like anything. If people enjoy it, they'll come back and watch.
Sorry, he stayed out for as long as he possibly could. He was hanging on the door, and we just wanted to see everyone. This is Max, everyone.
How are you doing, Matt?
Hey,
Nice
Max.
to see you.
One question on the back of that, Simon. Someone's asked about also developing coaches as well, and how key that is to the programme.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it's the most crucial part because I'm a coach. No, I think if you want to impact on the quality of players, there's one big thing, which is the infrastructure. The other key bit is the coaching that they're exposed to. The coaching is generally at the root of the player's development, or the speed of the root of the player's development, and the ability of a player to maximise their potential. And I think so for me, the coaching development is a huge part. From an England point of view, we've been very lucky in terms of the coaches we've recruited have been extremely strong coaches, particularly over the last 5-6 years, and I think that's been borne out in the fact that those coaches have now moved on to Premiership clubs. So obviously Matt Ferguson went to Northampton, really successful at Northampton, and Richard Blazes obviously moved on to Wasps. So for us, I think that demonstrates the strength of our programme in terms of being able to keep developing coaches, and also demonstrates that it's a quality environment for players to come and grow into. What we try to do is all our training sessions are open to the TP15 coaches. They can come in. They know the door is open to any training camp we have, and if it isn't, it's exceptional circumstances. So we try to engage the coaches into as much CPD as possible on their behalf, or sort of give them that opportunity. And it's very much a two-way thing. We go into the clubs, talk to their coaches, and there's some outstanding coaches now in the Premier 15s, and I think that's for me, that's one of the most exciting things, and it's certainly one of the reasons why the standard of play and the standard of player is growing so significantly now, because the quality of coaching that is going on within the clubs, and not just the coaching, the S&C, the medical, all the staffing that's in is really high, high performance. So I think it's a hugely key part. So we like to play our part. We like to think we try and play our part in so much that our sessions are open to those coaches and any other coaches who want to come along. Because we're in the business of developing. We certainly see ourselves anyway as in the business of developing to support and develop any coaches in the country. And what we do find in the Tyrells Premier 15s, and Susie will bear testimony to that, is that I'm sure they love to come to loads of our sessions, but they haven't got the time, because it's just because of their commitment within the club is so great. So maybe we need to, some of the things we need to investigate are how we can create better CPD opportunities and probably grow some of the coaching stuff a little bit, or add a bit more structure to that, I would have thought.
Okay, finally, Katy, one thing you'd like to see changed or you'd like to see happen with the TP15s?
Ooh, I think for me, it's just about the coverage of our games. I think we touched on it before, but I think as a league becomes more competitive and there's more interest in it, it becomes a lot more accessible. I remember saying in 2017, we shouldn't have to wait for a World Cup to realise that there's a market for women's rugby. And it sometimes feels that we keep doing that. We're surprised that 10,000 people came to watch us at Sandy Park.
Yeah.
Oh, it's brilliant. You're like, well, but we know this appetite is there for the game, and I think it's really about pushing, like Mids has talked about, pushing our league now, because actually that's there week in, week out, and it's like we've touched on, it's all around the country. You don't have to travel to London, you don't have to go to Exeter, you don't have to go to the north, because the games are going to now be around the country. And I think for me, what I want to see is a regular following that's going to impact our clubs, and people are going to build a network, because actually they will be the red roses of the future, but they will be also the supporters. And I think we can rebuild that at the club level, then it just continues to strengthen our game, but also ticks all the boxes of commercial, marketing, sponsorship as well.
And I think that's it. Ultimately, we've got what we should all be looking forward to, because I appreciate we've picked apart everything there is about the TP15s, but ultimately what we've got to look forward to is the excitement of two big established Premiership clubs adding their might to women's rugby.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan A, Susie. And hopefully, and I think for me, definitely being with my Sale Sharks hat on, it's just about how quickly you can do that. It's like Susie's touched on, about being competitive, but also being realistic. And about actually, again, come back to that I was saying about like running before you can walk. You need to get 40 players, you need to build your brand, you need to build your culture, and all those little bits that are really, really important in what made clubs sustainable and makes the likes of Saris and Quins as ferocious and as good as they are. That's not going to happen in the next 6 weeks, or probably not in the next season, actually. And I think just making sure that we're realistic in terms of our expectations for ourselves, but that doesn't mean that we're not competitive.
What does that mean success looks like for you in your sort of first few seasons?
I think, I mean, for me, in talking to Darren, it's about being competitive, and that's probably going to be a word that's going to be banged around a lot in terms of where we are, and I'm sure Susie will be the same. It's about making sure that when we're playing, we're competitive, but it's that balance of competition being realistic as well. And I think at the moment, like Mids has touched on, we're in very much unknown, more than we've ever been. So actually, until we get out of this and we can get to meet people, get to a training ground and get going, then we'll have a much better idea of what that looks like. But definitely in this league, we want to be competitive.
But now, sorry, go on, Susie.
Just to add to that, Alex, I think that's what the boss at the top wants, doesn't he? He wants you to compete, so that's really important. I think for both of us as brand new clubs, we're 3 years behind, effectively. You can look at it like that. They're 3 years ahead of us. So how can we make up ground, as quickly as we can? We're both in the fortunate position of having great infrastructure around us, so that's big tick box, but actually there's still going to be a lot of making up of ground to do. There's uncertainty, which is why players haven't come to us necessarily at the moment. So what we want to, I'm sure, I wouldn't be out of turn saying what us and Sharks want to provide is, in 3 years' time, you don't just know you're in the league and you're not having to retender and all that kind of stuff, but you've built something incredibly special that players A, want to come to, but B, they never want to leave. That's the big thing, isn't it? Let's come into this, let's build something that's so special that we're all a part of it. And when they do finish playing, they still want to be a part of it. So Gareth Steenson hanging up his boots whenever that time comes this season, he wants to stay in Exeter and be a part of it. That's what I feel really passionately about, that's what we want to produce. So yeah, that's
great. And Simon, presumably you just want some rugby to get played now?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Okay, everyone, look, thank you very much. This is there's been so many questions, so I really appreciate everyone answering them, but ultimately we're all really excited about the TP15s kicking off again. Just from our point of view, Rugby in Lockdown 5 next week. We're going to confirm the topic tomorrow, but we are just finishing off the latest issue where we've got our biggest ever interview, 8,000 words on the life and times of Rocky as in Emily Scarrett from her shed in the cow shed in the Leicestershire countryside. So she's picked over pretty much everything that's ever happened, including all the scary players at the beginning, friendships with Katy, and lots of incredibly important puzzles that she's been doing in the meantime. But there's also Vicky Fleetwood's on with her workout from home column. We've also got Jodie Ounsley from her cat hotel up north, and lots of other stuff, and including, which I'm going to show everyone now, an exclusive with Eddie Jones, who's been talking to us to Japan. And this is our cover, which we're not putting out till Thursday, but it's our first ever illustrated cover. So all of this will be on sale from Thursday. So please subscribe to the Rugby Journal. Thank you very much again to our panelists. I really appreciate your patience and answering all the questions. And good luck and stay safe, everyone. And see you all next week. Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers. Thanks, Alex. Cheers.
Bye.
All the best, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.